Ladies and gentlemen, tourism brings in about $5 billion a year, and that's great. Everyone thinks, wonderful, $5 billion. The dairy industry, which everyone thinks is our greatest industry, brings in about $7 billion. But it may surprise you to know that the manufacturing sector brings in around $8.5 billion to the New Zealand economy every single year. So people who say, well, we can't compete with China, we can't manufacture cheap goods that compete with Asian countries and things like that, they're actually right in a sense, because what those companies are doing is they are concentrating on high-tech, high innovation, high-value products, most of which are exported to Australia, and that is where the real growth opportunity lies for this country. You know, of those companies, the top 10 contribute around about $4 billion a year to our economy. If we had an environment...
Great, thanks John. I'm going to have to cut you off there. There'll be an opportunity for the speakers to respond to each other after we've gone through all of them once.
I'll continue that.
But we are running to a time limit, I'm afraid.
So next up we have Richard Wesley from the Green Party.
Yeah, hi everybody. My name's Richard. I'm from the Green Party. It's great to see so many people here, and thanks for coming along. I think the idea of tonight was to have the four speakers and the four parties put forward a vision for New Zealand and try and represent what their party is based on. So I'd like to say the New Zealand Green Party vision is that Aotearoa New Zealand is a place where people respect each other and the natural world we share. It's healthy, peaceful and richly diverse. Our economic system enables people to meet with their needs from the resources of the earth within nature's limits. All are able to participate meaningfully in decisions that affect our own and future generations. We recognise the rights and interests of those who cannot speak for themselves. So I'm excited by that outlook. I think that's a fantastic vision, and I think that's the sort of vision that everybody here would subscribe to as well, a green future. So the Green Party is founded actually on four basic principles: ecological wisdom, social responsibility, appropriate decision making, and non-violence. So first up, ecological wisdom. That's the concept that as human beings, as part of a natural world, all of this is finite. The natural world is finite, therefore unlimited material growth is impossible. So putting the environment first and then working from this basis when making day-to-day decisions on policy is really the only way to achieve a sustainable future for all of us here. So, for example, one of the Green Party's leading policies in the run-up to the election this year is cleaning up New Zealand's rivers. This is one of our major headline policies. The plan involves setting standards for clean water, introducing a fair charge for irrigation water, and supporting water clean-up initiatives. Next up in the Green Charter is social responsibility. So, unlimited material growth is impossible. Therefore, the key to social responsibility is a just distribution of social and natural resources, both here in New Zealand and globally. The Green Party recognises that there are some at the top of the ladder who are doing very well. There's also some at the bottom of the ladder that need a helping hand in life. And in between those two extremes, in New Zealand there are 4 million different life experiences. So, an example of putting this principle into a policy and moving it into a policy is another one of our headline policies in the lead up to the election. We're looking at practical steps to bring 100,000 children out of poverty. This includes making sure that rental properties are warm and healthy, that the minimum wage is raised to $15 an hour, and that parents have study support to allow them to access education. So the third principle is appropriate decision making. For the implementation of ecological wisdom and social responsibility, decisions have to be made directly at the level of those affected in a transparent and democratic manner. Here in Christchurch, we've been having a pretty hard time of it recently. First of all, we had all of the elected members of Environment Canterbury effectively sacked before we moved on to the, what was it called? The Canterbury Earthquake Response and Recovery Act, which revoked basically all the standing statutes on the books and passed them over to Jerry Brownlee. Also, at the coming election, I'd like to remind you that we've got a question there on MMP. So the Green Party strongly supports MMP. It's really the only electoral system that provides a proportional parliament and provides representation for everybody in New Zealand in a fair and equitable manner. The Green Party itself is run on democratic principles, with our list, unlike the other parties, being voted on by all the members of the Green Party. So even the Green Party list is a completely democratic process. So the final principle, non-violence. Violence never solves anything. All it does is create further injustices and further wrongs. So the Green Party has consistently opposed the extended deployment of SAS troops in Afghanistan. So this is an example of a policy that comes directly under that leading principle. Our policy is that armed services should only be deployed on UN-sanctioned peacekeeping missions such as those in East Timor. And even then, it should be an independent decision for New Zealand, not cowtailing after other countries or following along with different agendas to our own. The four principles then: ecological wisdom, social responsibility, appropriate decision making, and non-violence. Those are the four principles by which we judge all the policy work that the Green Party does. So you can sort of see that that's a strong and powerful platform for moving ahead with New Zealand. Green Party is often in the news, commenting on a whole range of issues, reading the newspapers and listening to the news reports. I think there's really one common and serious objection to the Green Party, and I think that can be summed up in one word, and it's sandals. I think really there's a quite widely held belief that Green Party members can only wear sandals, and so as you can see, I'm not wearing my sandals with my work suit today. I've gone for the standard black shoe. So I'd like to suggest to you that even if we did wear sandals, the message would still be the same: party vote Green. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard. Next up, please welcome Sam Collins from the National Party.
Well, thank you very much, and it's good to see so many people here today. I'd like to thank the Reason and Science Society for hosting this debate. Too often we are trapped by the soundbite politics of our modern age. So trapped by the soundbite politics of our modern age that we do not get the chance to lay out to you exactly why we believe as we do. Too often, politicians from across the democratic spectrum and across the democratic world allow debate to be conducted through intellectually lazy monikers that do not allow you, the voters, the opportunity to question the beliefs behind them. Like Richard, I believe this event is to get an understanding of the philosophy and the values of the four parties here today. So today, I would like to lay out some of the philosophical background of the National Party, where our philosophy differs from our friends on the left and right, and how that philosophy colours our policy. Allow me to give you a quick summary of what I see the National Party values and philosophy being. But like any party, National is a broad church, made up of individuals who each have their own views and their own values. The founding values of our party are loyalty to our country, and its democratic principles, and our sovereign as head of state. National and personal security, equal citizenship and equal opportunity, individual freedom and choice, personal responsibility, competitive enterprise and rewards for achievement, limited government, strong families and caring communities, and sustainable development of our environment. But what on earth does that all mean? Well, on the economy, the great debates of the last century have been between the three luminaries of economic philosophy: Keynes, Hayek, and Marx. This debate, if I may use the broadest brush possible, hinges on two main areas: who decides what the economy produces, and who decides who gets it. Keynesians and Marxists argue for government to have a large role in these decisions, either directly through combining control of production and distribution with a strong central plan, or indirectly through government spending that encourages production in particular areas, such as through trade barriers or subsidies. Hayek, on the other hand, believes that the best and most moral way to decide these questions is through the market. To put it another way, the one deals with how we cut up the pie. The second one deals with how to make more pies. Of course, under Marxism, they'd probably decide to make tractors instead, but you get the point. National does not definitively pick a side in this debate. We pragmatically take elements from both Keynes and Hayek to direct our economic policy. We seek to let the market do its job to raise the average living standards, to grow the pie, while using the power of the state and progressive taxation to protect the most vulnerable from the worst excesses of poverty and preventing them being left with no pie at all. We also believe in the importance of strong central government. Like Thomas Hobbes, we see central government as vital for protecting public order and private property. However, we believe, as opposed to socialism or fascism, in the supremacy of the individual against the state, that the right of individuals, both economic and social, should not be restricted without reasonable cause. This also extends to the expectation that by the government that people have both the right and the duty to take responsibility for their own lives. Naturally, most of our political opponents disagree with our views. The nature of competitive politics, as is the same in the competitive economy, is that alternative positions, strategies and ideas are offered, and it is up to you to decide which you prefer. Only through that choice, whether offered once every 3 years at the ballot box or every day in the marketplace, can each of us decide what is best, both for ourselves and our community. Insofar as these values lead to policy development, we are a pragmatic party. If we can solve an issue through the mechanism of the market, we will. This is how we have dealt with issues such as extending our mixed ownership model, our preference for an emissions trading scheme over a carbon tax, or allowing private prisons. However, if we believe we cannot solve a problem through the market fairly, we will use government regulation and money to achieve the desired outcome, such as through our youth welfare policy, our commitment to a public health system, and interest-free student loans. It is difficult to discuss policy for the long term, since events, dear boy, have a nasty habit of getting in the way. National stands for an organic and free economy, and the lack of a central plan makes attempting to identify specifics of the long run worse than useless, especially considering our short electoral cycle by international standards. However, National is committed to rebalancing the economy away from debt-fueled consumption and government overspending towards savings, investment and exports. National will always be committed to making more economic pie through policies to create strong economic growth. Because at the end of the day, without economic growth, what is the point of it all? What is the point of cutting a smaller pie into smaller pieces? What we want to give every New Zealander, no matter who they are, is the ability to gain the choice that higher growth and national wealth bring. We want a New Zealand with a high-class education system, modern, safe and effective hospitals, and public services that will leave the rest of the world behind. But without economic growth, without the ability to actually pay for it, these are just pipe dreams, or, if you like, just pie in the sky. For that is where we are today. The option of borrowing our way to prosperity is gone. So National is also committed to coin a phrase, owning our future, by cutting our debt and reducing our reliance on foreign moneylenders. Otherwise, we will see more money disappear overseas to pay for the money we borrow today, putting greater squeezes on essential public services. We are also working to continue to increase the skill base New Zealand will need in our modern interconnected world, especially the skills we need for rebuilding Christchurch. National and government has increased the number of tertiary places and committed to retain interest-free student loans. However, we must also work to ensure there are opportunities for our graduates when they leave university. The only way to offer these opportunities is to grow the economy, the knowledge economy, and encourage entrepreneurs to start new high-tech businesses. We have already seen success in some of these areas, such as agricultural technology, nanotechnology, and new chemical analysis systems. Much of it coming from this very university. I accept that National isn't, and probably never will be, a cool party. We are not a party that will seek to inflame your passions and lead you to the barricades. We are a party of pragmatism, of aspiration. We are a party that stands by those central tenets of conservatism: freedom, tolerance, self-reliance, loyalty, and free enterprise. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sam. And finally, from the ACT Party, Gareth Veale.
I'll make the pie big. My name is Gareth Veale. I was born in Greymouth. I grew up on the coast before leaving for school in Christchurch. I come from a very Labour-leaning background. My grandmother has a photo of Mickey Savage on her mantelpiece. She thinks I am crazy for standing as a candidate for ACT. Ask me 5 years ago, I would have agreed with her. I was a member of the Young Labour Party. Through growing, listening and absorbing the things around me, I've come to a few conclusions. Every party in Parliament wants a great future for New Zealand. Labour and the Greens are very vocal in their vision for a great future for New Zealand. ACT too has a great vision for a future for New Zealand. In my first voting election in 2008, I party voted ACT and gave my candidate vote to National. I'll urge you all to do that today. Earlier this year, I was a member of the National Party. Like many other National Party members, I had begun to have my doubts about National's ability to confront the issues that New Zealand faces today. John Key and National came into the 2008 election promising a more ambitious future and saying they would deliver change. To me and many others, notably my party leader, John Key and National have brought no such thing. Earlier this year, I got involved with the ACT Party on a member level and am now their candidate for Ireland. Today, we're only slightly better off under National than under Labour. To me, that is an abhorrent thought. The Labour Party wants a good, happy and free New Zealand, but in reality, its methods to gain this increase the size of government and subjugate the people into dependency. National has not reversed this great trend. That is why I'm standing as a candidate for the ACT Party. The ACT Party stands for a new approach, not more of the old same. You may ask, what does this mean? To answer this question, you must first understand our rationale. We believe that for the most part, individuals, you, me, and the next guy, are capable of making decisions for themselves and therefore, for the most part, able to govern their own lives. Although with this individual freedom comes inherent responsibility. Successive governments over the last 80 years have eroded individual responsibility and made many of our fellow New Zealanders dependent on the state. It is not the role of government to assume such responsibility from individuals. That said, over the last 80 years, New Zealand has seen some great changes. No longer is the threat of war a reality in our lives. We can expect to grow up in a safe and peaceful country. To topical issues, in 1981 we stood up against the Springbok for their South African apartheid. Today women have the same rights as men. A young woman can grow up in this country to be whatever she wants to be. 30 years ago it was illegal to have same-sex relations. Today same-sex couples are making great inroads and gaining the same rights and responsibilities as heterosexual couples. To us in ACT, this is a great human achievement. No longer are we shackled to the state controlling most of our personal freedoms. But ACT, like the left of New Zealand politics, the Greens and Labour, are proud of these changes, but we know there is so much more we can do. With these gains, we've lost so much. That is where ACT sets itself apart from the mainstream left. We believe in economic freedom too. We believe that people should be given the right to provide for themselves and their families. We blame successive governments for creating an underclass totally dependent on the state. Today, some 200,000 children are in poverty in the land of milk and honey. As Honi Harawira likes to say, this is not good enough, and ACT agrees. However, where my party and I differ from the rest is we have a different approach. The answer is not more of the same. Honi would pay beneficiaries the equivalent of minimum wage. ACT would give them a job. Throwing money at the issue is like pouring petrol on the fire. Giving incentives to young women to not further their education, have multiple children, and be totally dependent on the state, to me, is an evil. Why support a system that limits people like this? Today we have second and now third generation beneficiaries claiming a benefit not as a hand up into paid employment, but as a handout, a birthright into a future as an underclass totally dependent on the state. I believe that this poverty, this underclass, is not only bad for individuals within it, but a stain on our country's belief that we are a fair and just society. To this end, Acts would combat these issues by reforming welfare, the education system, and the economy, to ensure that there are plenty of well-paying jobs for everyone, and there's plenty of pie to go around. ACT believes that with a job you have a place in society, and from that we can cure a lot of our social ills. With a job comes responsibility, with family comes even more responsibility. Young men and women should not have to look to the state to provide it for them, they can do it themselves. Whoever was at first to think that 121 people so far removed from you and reality in Wellington care about your plight, your life, and your ambition. That is why ACT calls for power to the individual and not to the state. ACT believes in people, not government looking after people. Families looking after families, and communities looking after communities. And a government in its place, ensuring peace, justice, and fair treatment for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Gareth. If you'll just give me a moment to confer with the candidates. Okay, we're just going to have a quick couple of rebutting speeches from the first couple of speakers, and then we're going to launch into the audience question and answer session. So, thank you. Once again, John Parsons from Labour.
Well, thanks, guys. I think the clock's ticking for me now, so I better get straight into it. Look, they say that when candidates are on the stumps, the air is full of promises and vice versa. And I think that you've probably heard a few of those today. But look, I'd like to ask all of the candidates, where are the specifics? I mean, we had the national candidate say that national stands for equal citizenship. Well, that would be why people like John Key gave himself a $1,000 a week tax cut, while at the same time raising the minimum wage by, wait for it, 25 cents an hour. That's really about equal citizenship. You know, we had the national candidate talk about sustainability, but where are the promises? Where's the policy? Where is the sustainability? Again, no specifics. We had the ACT candidate talking about, well, quite a brilliant solution really. Let's get all these beneficiaries, let's give them a job. Well, hey, That's a great idea, but where are the jobs? How are you going to create these jobs? Do you seriously think that these people are just sitting on their butts because there are 1,000 jobs out there for them? No, I'm sorry guys, but that's the kind of nonsense that you will hear from these parties. If you want firm policies, then look at Labour, because they have them. They have the specifics, they have the policies, and they don't engage in empty promises that they can't deliver. Now, I'd have to say the only candidate who actually made some sense was the Green Party candidate, and I agree completely. I agree completely that our future has to be sustainable. And that is why, during my first speech, I was going to talk about a high-tech, innovative industry sector that is sustainable, that doesn't create carbon, that uses our knowledge and our skills to create wealth and to give people good, high-paying jobs, and does not have a beneficial, a bad effect on our environment. You know, what we have to do is we have to stop taking our environment for granted. We have to stop having our major industries exploit the environment. Instead, we have to exploit our knowledge, our innovation, our skills. And that is a key policy. And so far, no one else has come up with any answers. Now, I'm happy to take questions from anybody.
Actually hold the questions until we've gone to the other candidates.
Right. I'll be back.
Right, quick fire, rebuttal. I want to thank the other candidates, is what I'm here to do. It was fantastic, really working through those other ones and hearing them agree with Green Party policy. The Green Party is really the leaders. We're out in front. We really are the party of young people. If you look at the demographics of who votes, it's generally younger, it's generally highly educated. So ACT are very keen on free market. They're very, very keen on letting the market decide, and so I'm pleased that they support our policy of charging for water. Obviously, when you've got a resource, something as precious as water here in Canterbury, and all they do is they pump it out of these limited finite aquifers, and they spray it all over the ground in the middle of a hot day, and it all evaporates. Well, that's fine. They can do that as long as they can pay for it. So I think that charging for water, thank you very much for that. National. We heard National say the sustainable environment. It was one of the lines there for the real things that National believe in, and so I was under the impression that actually it was the huge outcry from New Zealanders from all around New Zealand against mining in national parks, but actually it was National actually came to that conclusion anyway, that actually digging up our national parks and mining them for a few resources and selling all of that overseas was really a very, very bad idea. So thank you, National. Labour, I just want to say, well, I've been waiting for this opportunity to thank Labour. The Green Party's had many long-standing financial and economic policies that have been waiting in the wings for somebody to pick them up. So we're a very caring, loving party, so we're happy to share our policy. GST of fresh fruit and vegetables has been a long-standing one for the Green Party, now picked up by the Labour Party. Happy to work with them on that one. And also the tax, the capital gains tax, is another one, which is a long-standing, even before the Green Party, the Values Party. Why is there an entire source of income in New Zealand completely untaxed? So we're fantastic, and I want to thank Labour for picking up those Green Party policies. So, Green Party, setting the agenda. Thank you very much.
Yeah, g'day. Well, I wasn't actually planning to have a rebuttal. Actually, I thought that we were all here to talk about values and greater issues than political sound bites, but unfortunately, certain other members have decided to take that option away from me. In response to a few of John's statements, I would point out that early childhood education hasn't been cut. It's being increased by $550 million over the next 4 years. And 20 hours free 20 hours free childcare has been extended to play centres, which it wasn't under Labour. So that's an interesting way to describe a cut, but there we are. And I was also a bit disappointed to hear John seemingly attacking the low-wage workers who work in the tourism industry. I think any job is better than somebody sitting at home. I agree with Gareth in this respect, someone who's sitting at home on the dole. It's better for them to be out actually working, and it's unfortunate that Labour's minimum wage plan will actually destroy 600 of these low-paid jobs, which strikes me as a bit of a pity as well. As I said, that's knowledge economy. I think it's a very good thing to bring more companies like Google and Apple to New Zealand. But we have to remember that these companies won't come here if we're an economic basket case, which is what our economy will probably be like if we suffer through 10 years of the Labour tax plan. So, yeah, it's a pity that we had to go down this route, but there we are. Anyway, thank you.
I'd like to say John kind of sounds like an ACT Party member. Yeah, he talks about lowering taxes and increasing growth and productivity. That's what the ACT Party stands for. The ACT Party originally was coined the Association of Consumers and Taxpayers Act. So yeah, we believe in lowering taxes. We believe in taxing everything. So the ACT Party believes in a capital gains tax in theory, but we don't believe now is the answer to bring in more taxes and tax people. We don't believe that the time is to tax people for carbon and not have any real impact on our production of carbon in the future and global impact of global warming, etc. We don't believe in those sorts of things. We believe in creating jobs for people, not the government creating jobs. We believe in private enterprise creating jobs through lower taxes. So we would say our tax policy is quite clear and simple. Labour want to increase the tax-free threshold to $5,000. We want to increase it to $30,000. We want the first $30,000 of income to be tax-free. You don't hear that often, do you? We also want a flat tax, so no progressive tax, from $30,000 around 15%. We want a capital gains tax of around 15%. Pretty much we want everything at 15%. We think it's fair, we think it's good, and it would increase our prospects in the future. It would increase the pie substantially. Of course, there will always be the people that have a little bit more pie than others, but the people at the bottom will have more pie rather than having none at all. People would have jobs because there would be growth in employment. Nationals had 3 years and Labour had 9. It's pretty rich of them to come over and say that it's Nationals' problem when they had 9 years to help it themselves. Labour in 2008 abolished youth rates, and what did that do? Here's unemployment before 2008 and the abolition of youth rates, and here's unemployment for youth today. Are you going to see that? Look what's happened.
So anything to do with the recession?
Well, if you look at overall unemployment, it nearly hasn't been affected nearly as much. Youth rates brought this in. We believe that it priced people out of the market. It took them out of those low-paying tourism jobs. We believe in increasing R&D and all that. We would lower taxes for everyone. We would increase growth for everyone, not just a select few. That's ACT Party policy. Thank you.
I want you guys to pass this around answering the audience questions. Well, thank you very much to all our candidates. Now I'd like to open the floor for the audience to ask any questions they might like to. I know there was someone up here who had a question for our Labour candidate, so I'll get you first.
Well, this is specifically for John. Do you wholeheartedly believe that Phil Goff can lead the left of the New Zealand Labour Party and can be the next Prime Minister of New Zealand, and why?
Yes, I do, because I know that Phil is a very, very competent, very well experienced man, and he has the background and the experience to lead this country into a better and brighter future.
Are you saying that John Key doesn't have that experience?
Yes, I am. I don't think that John Key has any experience apart from being able to smile and walk away from a problem.
Yeah, so you in the red, I think.
Yeah, I had another question for John. You're so keen on getting, more high-tech, industry for New Zealand, but would you subsidise university education for everyone to become more intelligent in order to have the people to invent these new high-tech technologies?
I believe that universities need better funding. I think they need better staffing. I think that students these days work under an enormous burden, knowing that they're going to have to spend half their working lives paying off their debts. I do believe that our focus needs to go into both the intellectual property, which you guys are developing at the moment, and also in attracting companies to actually use your intellectual property. Those are the two key things to actually grow that R&D sector. The other thing that is required is that we have to make New Zealand a place where people of talent want to come. And that means preserving our environment, preserving everything that is good about New Zealand, and not selling it down the road for the sake of a carbon scheme or any of these other things that these guys have delayed and haven't done anything about. So it has to be a coordinated approach. There has to be a plan and there has to be a vision.
No, okay, well, if you guys want to stick your hands up anytime, I'm keeping a list here and I'll just add you to it whenever. So I think you in the front got just in before the other guy.
Questions for John. I liked a lot about what you said with regards to the economy, but don't you think that our current economic plan centres on our agriculture and our tourism because that's where our core competencies are? And on top of that, don't you think that output per worker is more productive in IT because it's less labour intensive, so therefore you've got a lower denominator?
Well, firstly, I think that what we have to do is we have to tackle the myth that the only thing we are good at is growing grass and milk. We are actually good at a whole range of things. And the reason that we don't understand this is because good companies like Raycon Technologies, who produce crystals for GPS devices, they get in about $2 billion a year, but they don't advertise on the back of buses. They're not on the TV. We don't actually understand that we do have a very good and a very competent high-tech sector right at the moment. And all I'm saying is that if we can focus on things that will bring us growth without detriment to the environment, then we have a plan and we have a vision for the future.
And the gentleman in the billabong top, yeah.
This is for everyone. What are your views on gay marriage?
Maybe we'll start with someone aside from John this time. So let's go to the other end and begin with Gareth.
ACT is all for gay marriage. We believe that people should be allowed to do what they want, in essence. We're a very liberal personal freedoms party. All of our MPs voted in favour of the Civil Union Bill when it came. We also voted in favour of the likes of the Prostitution Reform Bill. We tend to err on the side of classical liberalism, which means that people are able to do what they want within the bounds of not affecting other people's ability to do what they want as well.
Well, first thing I'd point out is that obviously this kind of question will be a conscience vote matter in Parliament, so I wouldn't want anybody to think that my personal view is that of the National Party at large. This is my view, and this is how I would vote if I was in Parliament. I am strongly for gay civil unions. I'm actually pro-gay marriage, but the one slight caveat I have is that I'm concerned that the Bill of Rights Act, if people use the Bill of Rights Act to force churches or mosques or synagogues to allow marriages that they find wrong for whatever reason they find wrong, I don't think I think the separation between church and state needs to go both ways, and I don't think it's the right of the government to tell people what they can and cannot do in their own church. So yes, I'm for it, but only so long as nobody can use it to force people to do them.
Great. Well, obviously the Green Party believe in a rich and diverse society where all forms of unions, all forms of marital status are not only accepted, but not discriminated against. So it's a very, very strong policy within the Green Party to work against any form of discrimination on any grounds. So, for example, number 14 on our list is could possibly be the first deaf MP into Parliament. Mojo Mathers is the Green Party candidate for Eastern Christchurch, and on our current polling she would be in Parliament. So that'll be very interesting to see how Parliamentary Services manage to deal with the first deaf MP into Parliament.
I think in terms of Labour it's very, very simple. We have a long history of freedom of choice in this respect. In terms of my own views, I think that government should have nothing whatsoever to do with people's personal choices, and I'm fully supportive of whatever people want to do, as long as there is no impact on other people's well-being or benefit.
Thank you all.
Alright, I think I'll represent Sam for the moment, that I'll probably get a response from everybody. New Zealand's had proportional representation of more or less for the going on 18 years of it. That's pretty much exactly my voting lifetime, because that was my perspective. But New Zealand still seems to have something of an abusive relationship with this concept of an adversarial political system. What is your party going to do to try and wean us off the adversarial system and onto a more cooperative system where more things get done and less time is spent arguing with each other on principle?
Well, firstly, I'd say that's not a party political issue. That's something that should be dealt with by all parties in Parliament. And quite a lot of movement has already been made on that. For example, select committees now have a lot more power to scrutinise legislation. The government really has a majority on all select committees. The minority is able to publish reports, which are then presented in the House along with the majority reports. The way forward, I don't know. I think it's something that can only happen through slow evolution. I don't think that there's one thing we can say, bang, that's it. That's the end of the adversarial system. I mean, for example, we've already moved away from, we never had it, but we don't have quite the same seating plan as they do in Britain, for example. We had the two parties sitting opposite each other right the way down like battle lines, which I suppose is what they were in the old days. We had the curve, which supposedly is supposed to, according to some political scientists, supposed to increase the cooperative nature of Parliament. I don't think that moving to, say, a system like they have in Denmark or Sweden, where everybody sits in just a big circle, or in the European Union Parliament, I don't think that will make a big difference. So I think it's just an evolutionary thing, assuming that MMP is retained this election.
Would any of the other candidates like to address that question?
Yeah, I'd just like to say perhaps that the Green Parties work cooperatively with both Labour and National as the current two largest parties in the Parliament. Obviously we worked very hard over the 9 years with Labour, and then over the past almost 3 years now with National. There was a working agreement with National. We gained $323 million worth of home insulation package. So yeah, the Greens are very keen on cooperative government and really setting the example since we've had an influence in Parliament since MMP was brought back. So it was brought in. So yeah, really, we need MMP. We need MMP to be retained at this coming referendum. So I encourage you all to vote for that one.
Thanks. Where's he gone? Dave Jackson. There. Sorry, blind. Your question.
What do you guys want to give me a job?
Yeah, the ACT Party has them.
ACT Party. $32 million of growth over here.
I'll take that as a no. Yes, sir, just there.
Two questions for all members. What is your opinion on the usage of urgency, and do you think it's being abused currently?
I absolutely think it's being abused. I think that the use of urgency in Parliament is absolutely appalling. Under the current national government, there has been more urgency, more bills brought under urgency before the Parliament than in the entire previous 9 years of the Labour government. So it's absolutely ridiculous. Under the Canterbury Recovery Bill was when the 3 strikes IT law came in. What did the rather undereducated MP called it? Skynet. So I mean, it's ridiculous. Here's a law that the MP knows hardly anything about being brought in under urgency with absolutely no justification. So yes, my answer is yes. I'd love to hear from the other candidates.
Well, I also think that there's far too much legislation being ran through without any proper debate. The whole point of having a debating chamber is though that we can have different points of view so that we actually arrive at a decent solution. And if you do things at 10 p.m. on a Friday night and try to rush legislation through, you are going to get bad legislation. And I think we're seeing that time and time again. It's a very, very bad practice, and I think it should be stopped.
I think it's pretty rich of the Labour Party to go on about wasting parliamentary time when they debated to the hilt the VSM bill, cost the country millions of dollars in just their debating time, stopping members' bills from going through Parliament.
It wasn't my question. What's your opinion?
My opinion, I believe that National's done bugger all this term. So the stuff that's been pushed through urgency has really come to no effect. There are greater issues.
Well, John, would you like to reduce? What did you reduce?
I believe very strongly in the parliamentary process. I would hesitate to actually do anything to attack a government that's led by my party. But I think that parliamentary process is very important. I think that that a law that's put through without being discussed properly and all MPs understanding it is very dangerous. It's not a problem that's unique to New Zealand, of course. I mean, all countries have times where bills are rammed through without proper decision. I mean, a number in America, for example, and they have 2 chambers to get through. But so yes, I hope that kind of answers your question.
At this stage, I'm going to ask if there are any more questions specifically for Sam, because I understand he has to leave within the next 10 minutes. So if you guys have questions for Sam Collins, well, there's quite a few. Okay, we'll go with you first.
You talk about personal freedom and personal security, and you always say that they're going hand in hand. But actually, what we need to see is that sacrificing freedom or security for freedom, especially with the Rugby World Cup, now National Party, well, the government has the right to read our Facebook, without being our freedom. Reading our emails, doing, just Big Brother us, whatever you want to call it. And yet you're saying you're so big for our personal freedom and privacy and, our rights as civilians, but it seems that you're not practicing what you preach, which seems to be...
I make 2 points to that. The first one is there will always be the National Party isn't the Liberal Party. The National Party is that's him. The National Party is a fusion of the old Liberal Party and the old Reform, if you like, Conservative Party. So there's always going to be that tension over the question of rights versus responsibility. No, I disagree, because as I said during my speech, the rights should be, the people should have individual rights up to the point where potentially there is a cost to people as a whole. And so I don't actually have a huge problem with security measures for something like the World Cup, where if something went wrong, it could lead to catastrophic, a catastrophic event. Thank you.
Well, we'll wait to see if those laws are taken away after the World Cup.
Well, vote for me and I'll take them away.
Yeah.
Here's your promises, John.
No, yes, in the straight shirt.
You also mentioned sustainable environment, but I think the other day your massive faces on cutting, this face is massive on the side of this big 4-wheel drive we were driving around. So
it's not that big. I failed to see your point. What's?
Why do you need a massive four-wheel drive, which obviously has a bigger carbon footprint, and you could have something smaller and reduce
Yeah, RAV4. I wouldn't call a RAV4 a massive four-wheel drive, mate. But you know, there you are. I could have a Hummer, I suppose.
So pretty much your concern with the environment is not a personal one, but rather just to get votes.
That's a very. No, I mean, from the very beginning, I said that that it's sustainable environment development with sustainable environmentalism. I mean, we can't. I don't want us to go back to I don't want us to go back to lower living standards than we did previously, which is what some people in the Green movement seem very happy to accept.
Why does the third of our population have lower living standards now?
Sorry?
Why does the third of our population have lower living standards?
Lower absolute living standards or lower comparative living standards?
Ask Labour.
Yeah.
National Labour, they don't disagree.
Yes, sir, you had your hand up for a question.
Have you ever shared files, or do you currently do that, and what's your opinion of the bill?
Gosh, can you check about that?
Are we still recording? We're still recording.
I absolutely approve of the copyright thingy bill.
Yeah, over here.
There's a lot of talk about pies in this.
So if you don't like pie, give me something else.
I have no problem with pie themselves, but the Green Party MP is the only one who seems to see that pie is not infinite and can't keep growing. And so there's a lot of talk about GDP, when actually something like the General Progress Indicator is a lot more indicative of what's going on for each individual. And you can't just say that you're going to divide up the pie and that everyone's going to be better off. So what do the other three parties have to say about the fact that actually we can't have infinite gross domestic product increases?
Oh, well, I'll take this one first. I think that history has shown us that as technology improves, we can continue to grow the pie in an economically sustainable fashion. Well, historically, that's what we've moved through technology and. Sorry?
Interruption.
Yes.
So you're saying that technological advances will allow us to exceed the physical limits of the...
No, not... It's a very interesting... Sorry?
Is that with the magic wand?
The magic wand.
Magic wand. No. So as technology increases, we firstly see things happening more in a more sustainable technologies coming through. I mean, we're seeing many of them come through the market. So we are seeing more sustainable technologies come through that can allow us to continue to grow economically while still reducing our overall environmental impacts. I mean, we are seeing those technologies come through now.
I would like to say something actually. I do believe that GDP does increase and that we will increase GDP if we follow the right policies. China is an emerging market. The middle class in China is about 20% at the moment. It will increase to hopefully to the same standard as ours in years to come. As it increases, the demand for goods and services from us increases, and therefore to our GDP that will mean good things. So I do believe there is room for economic growth, and I'm not a doomsday theorist like the Green Party. I don't believe that we should divvy up the pie equally to everyone and make sure we're all in poverty. I believe that we should increase the GDP, increase growth, and make sure all of us come through better off.
Thanks very much to the ACT Party and the National Party. We've just heard from Gareth that we're just going to find another 5 planets if China and India come up to the same living standards and consumption ratios of the rich Western world, the OECD. We just need to quickly find ourselves another 5 planets. So that's really quite a promise. I do want to come back to the pies. The pies do often get talked about, and obviously the Green Party is very supportive of another 2 pies that don't even get talked about. We only hear about GDP from the right-wing parties. They never even think about the social pie and the environmental pie. So it's not quite as simple as one pie and chopping it up. There are 3 pies involved, just for starters.
At this point, I think Sam is...
I can wait for John to speak.
Okay, we'll be seeing Sam off shortly.
Well, look, in terms of your question, I think that GDP is an indicator of standard of living. It's not necessarily the be-all and end-all, but it does reflect the standard of living of the society on which that GDP is based. Now, what I'm saying is that what we have to do is look at the way we are producing that GDP and stop exploiting our environment. I mean, for instance, there are 3 times as many dairy cows on the same amount of land that there were in the 60s and 70s. What we have to do is switch our focus to environmentally sustainable technologies that can increase our standard of living and not have a detrimental effect on our environment and our overall standard of living. So GDP is not the be-all and end-all, but it is a reflection of the standard of living that people in our society should expect.
Right, well, as I said, Sam is going to have to race off now, so
good to meet you.
If you'd all give him a round of applause. And I'm sorry if any of the 2 people that I still have on my speaking list wanted to ask him questions, but it's too late. Over here, yes.
This is for John. I want to know what your response is to the Royal Commission's report that medical marijuana should in fact be trialled because it has been scientifically proven to have medical benefits.
If the Law Commission is recommending that, I have no issue with that whatsoever. I mean, there's a lot of evidence, certainly from the United States, where it is legal for medicinal purposes, that there are benefits there. What I would say is that, in general terms, I think we have to be very, very careful about all substances such as marijuana, and I include alcohol because there is a huge cost to our society with abuse of those substances. However, if they are sanctioned for medical use and there are good reasons for using them, no problem whatsoever.
Would any other candidates like to address that question?
The ACT Party has no formal policy on it, but there's a lot of sentiment within the party that it's mindless to have the use of marijuana a criminal offence. Removing the policy to make it criminal offence would automatically remove a vast funding element for criminal organisations. It would allow people to not be criminals who smoke pot, inhale, as John Key did, Phil Goff did. On a side note, very quickly, Phil Goff in 1994 toyed with the idea of becoming leader of the ACT Party. It shows how his values change. Thank you.
Yeah, the gentleman in the centre here.
It's a swap, yeah.
Enlightenment.
Was that your question?
No, I have a question. GDP, right, is measured on the growth of the amount of products being produced by a nation, correct? Right, so when your technology gets better and better, theoretically you produce less goods because, one, they're more economical, meaning they last longer, they cost less to produce, and they're more efficient. So how does GDP reflect actually an effective growing technologically advanced economy?
Or your technology allows you to produce more.
Bullshit. That breaks.
We're not China.
No, I don't see the connection. Everyone's always saying, hail the GDP, let's all bow down to this, growth of nothingness. It's an indicator which is almost useless because if you built 1,000 laptops and they're all broke within a week because of some manufacturing fault, it will count as great GDP.
Moreover, corrections not spent, which are a cost to the society, go to positive GDP growth.
It is the opposite to economising the country.
In fact, the founder who brought up the GDP measure quickly said it was not a good measure.
Yeah, I mean,
it's indicative.
That's a question to you somehow.
It's it indicates per capita indicates. Like John was talking about industries per capita being very low wage, and they are. We should be investing in high wage earning business and parts of the economy. But the thing is, GDP is an indicator of overall welfare and happiness and all those sorts of things. The Greens would like to go to a lot of... Look, by definition it's not. If people are richer and they've got food in their bellies, they're generally happier.
There was a psychological study on humans, the amount of times, you know how they have those bipolar tests, it's like, how often do you feel useless? Sometimes, a lot, all the time.
I feel useless all the time.
They did a test, and apparently, until the point of earning $23,000 a year, which is nothing, more money did affect their average happiness, which is very surprising. But it's obviously the other circumstances are their health, so this is where the Greens can come in to make them happier, or things like the crime, the behaviour of the family towards them, and things like this. It's not money, it's not their TV, which obviously nobody had in the 1800s.
Yeah, I was wondering if Richard could maybe elaborate a little on some of those other indicators that you think should be used in addition to GDP.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, effectively, triple bottom line reporting is something that the Green Party promotes very much, because for any business, there are those three aspects to a business. So the social indicator is very much to do with the labour force, very much to do with employment, very much to do with workers' rights and ensuring that there is a quality social experience for employees. It's the freedom to unionise, the freedom to collectively bargain is a strong platform for the Greens, because we believe that obviously there's a power imbalance between an employer and an employee, so that's a very important point. On the environmental side, obviously we're working towards sustainability, so we need that sustainability pie to be measured. I mean, that is the fascinating thing about so many things in New Zealand, that you would imagine there would be a water quality standard. You would imagine that there would be some standard by which you could even measure whether you have good water quality or not. In fact, there isn't. It doesn't even exist. And that's why our Cleaning New Zealand Waterways policy, the first part of that policy is simply setting the standard so that we can make that measurement. So for the environmental slice of the pie, it's been great with the carbon credits, with the carbon trading scheme coming in, at least making those measurements. A lot of people say, oh, it's too hard to measure. Well, it's just not true. You can measure anything that you're interested in, and that's obviously the first step to managing it. So that environmental side of the triple bottom line is very important. And then obviously the one that everybody looks at is that 1/3 of the slice, which is the economic side. And obviously we've got quite a suite of economic policy, which is all about taxing bad things and getting the taxes off good things. So, I mean, in theory, it's something that all the other parties harp on about, but the Green Party has quite clear and distinct policies on those things. And we strongly, strongly disagree with some of the things put forward by ACT. I mean, moving to a regressive tax scheme is an appalling suggestion. This sort of 15% tax rate is if 15% of anything is always the same impact. I mean, it's a crazy scheme. So I'd just like to drop that one in as well. But that's a quick overview of the triple bottom line.
Right. And over here, sorry.
Actually, my question is for the Green candidate again. I just wanted to know your opinion on the recently passed ETS, because it got modified a lot on its way through, from what it was originally, and it ended up being something probably quite different from what it was intended to be. And I was curious.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not a huge expert on the ETS, so I can't cover it in depth. But I mean, effectively, when you bring in these schemes, there's two definite directions that you can go, and this is an argument they're having in Australia at the moment: is whether you have a direct tax on carbon or whether you go for a trading model. And I think basically the original green policy was actually a tax. I mean, carbon's bad, it's a revenue gatherer. If you gather revenue off that carbon tax, then you're able to drop taxes in other areas. I mean, other areas that we want to drop taxes. So probably the original Green Party preference was for a carbon tax. Obviously the New Zealand model transferred into this emissions trading scheme where you effectively choose a level. So we, I think, have chosen 1990 as our level of carbon that we're going to try and get back to, and if you emit above that, then you've got to pay credits. I mean, in theory, I think a lot of strong business interests push that way because they believe once you've got a market, you can manipulate it. So I think that's already happened through the government ups and downs on the emission trading scheme. I mean, it's ridiculous having an entire sector of the New Zealand economy completely exempted for so long, and those provisions won't come in, I think, now until 2015 on the dairy farms. So there's constant wheeling and dealing, but obviously having something is better than nothing, and the Green Party is working very hard to get that being a comprehensive ETS scheme functioning efficiently. So the aim is to reduce our carbon footprint and reduce that. So anything that goes towards that ultimate goal, keeping hold of that ultimate goal is the idea.
Would either of the other candidates like to address that question? John, by all means.
I'd just like to say that obviously the Labour Party initially introduced the idea of an ETS. Since then it's been watered down and really is in no way, shape or form the scheme that we wanted to introduce. But looking forward, I just wanted to say that it is clear Labour Party policy that what we do is we bring forward the implementation of the ETS on dairy farmers and the agricultural sector. If we bring that forward by as little as 2 years, that actually pays the entire amount that we are saying that we will put into research and development. So there is no net cost to the government simply by bringing the ETS forward and making those people who are polluting our waterways and our lands actually pay their share. That way we are creating enough income to pay for the entire research and development budget that needs to be spent.
ACT's policy is that now is not the time for new taxes. You increase taxes on producers, you increase the price of goods at the end of the day. Labour would like to say, 15% off fresh fruit and vegetables. What use is that if fresh fruit and vegetables are priced out of your range? The people at the bottom are the people that we should be focusing on. We should be focused on making jobs for them, not limiting their ability to find a job by putting harsh embargoes on business.
So, sorry, can I just ask, how does removing 15% GST on fruit and vegetables make it harder for people on low incomes to buy fruit and vegetables?
Well, the fact of the matter is, increasing taxes will make it harder for people to buy these sorts of things. Yeah, so what sort of bureaucracy is Labour going to create which dictates what is fresh food and vegetables? Is a frozen chicken going to be fresh fruit and vegetables? But how many people at the bottom receive these things? Universal subsidies to everyone. Why should rich get the same 15% off fresh fruit and vegetables? Why should everyone get it when really you should be focusing on the people that actually need to be helped, the people that need to get work, the people that need incomes?
Well, why are you giving more money to the rich and this money to the poor? You're going to try to tax the rich at 15%. How's that?
I think I'll get you guys to put your hands up to go on the speaking list if you have a specific question. So you're third. You're third. We have 2 people before you. Actually, we do have 2 people ahead of you on the speaking list. So I'm going to go with them. This gentleman over here is first.
Yeah. You say now is not the time. So the question doesn't get up. But if not now, then when?
Well, the fact of the matter is, taxing is not going to give us any benefit. There's not going to be any benefit in the fact that what we're trying to combat through taxing carbon is lowering carbon emission. It's not going to do that. It's going to limit growth. It's going to hurt people. We care about people.
In favour of the capital gains tax and a couple of others, but not right now.
Oh no!
Not now.
No, the fact of the matter is, we believe that taxes are unfair across the system. We believe everything should be taxed, but at a low rate, to ensure that there is growth and productivity. We believe that the pie can be built bigger, and that by taxing it, we limit its ability to growth. It's just pure simple economics.
Yeah, but it has to be pointed out that the ACT Party doesn't actually accept the science on global warming. You can see in their policy that they don't even accept global warming. So if that isn't an ostrich, well, go and read your policy. It's written there. It's ostrich head in the sand stuff. It's It's bizarre.
I'll take the question from the lady in the blue glasses.
Sandals.
Don't do the taxes right now. If you don't do ETS taxing right now, are you culturally will to just go to shit for the next 50 years so you don't have to take responsibility now?
So New Zealand, a fraction of a percent of the overall emissions, is going to bear the brunt of the world in limiting people and increasing prices for those most vulnerable. I don't agree with that. I don't think that's right. That's just the way I see it.
Other people have ETS, the EU.
Who? The EU. They subsidise everything to the hilt. It's unsustainable and they're not going to do well out of it.
And the gentleman in the red. Now it's your turn.
You're always bashing beneficiaries, but first you want to, you say, let's get everyone off these benefits and you love people. But then does that not mean, since there aren't jobs currently for them, that will then mean that they have to find this money through other means such as crime, prostituting themselves, selling drugs, or just plain stealing?
Well, if you actually listen to me, I said that we would encourage growth, that there are jobs. We're not going to cut benefits and chuck them out into a workforce where there's no work for people. We're not about that. We're just about the fact that we now have second and third generation beneficiaries totally dependent on welfare. That to me is wrong and evil. People should be given opportunities to go into work by governments following proper policies that increase growth, increase work for people at the bottom, increase work for everyone. That's the way we see it.
Do you mean growth or GDP?
Growth, GDP, everything.
I've forgotten exactly who it was, but there was someone in that block. Yeah.
Yeah, so New Zealand had neoliberal economic policies in the 80s, 84 people. Right. Things are pretty much gotten worse in the 40s, and the gap between rich and poor has gotten a lot larger. I mean, why would more neoliberal economics reverse that or rectify that situation at all?
Well, that's not exactly true. The government still has a very left-wing delivery system. A lot of our services, a lot of our ways are still very left-wing. We still have a welfare system that tries to subsidise everyone, remove their responsibilities. Up until the late 1990s, even 2005, things were getting better. People were being employed and all those sorts of things. Government expenditure wasn't extreme, but after 2005 and Labour nearly losing the election, they increased spending. They started subsidising everything. They've increased government expenditure and have made it harder for this national government to combat the recession. And therefore, jobs and the prospect of a job has become a thing that just isn't attainable for most people, for people at the bottom.
We're going to have to wrap up very soon, so if you just finish answering the question, but I'm just letting you know that I'm closing the speaking list now, so I'll take your question and yours, but then that's it. You were saying? Sorry.
Oh, it's fine.
Right, okay. Josh.
To Gareth, are you aware of what actually caused the recession?
What actually caused the recession? In America...
I believe it was neoliberal economics.
Well, no. What caused it was an initiative from the Clinton administration that basically said to people, basically said to banks, lend to anyone. And so they lent to anyone, they were reckless and they were bad. That is not neoliberal. That is not market theory. That has nothing to do with it. That is bad government policy that makes it harsher for us today.
So can I just say that this is a great example of the government removing controls and look at the consequences.
That was a government enforcing banks and making sure that they lent to people who couldn't sustain loans. And
look, I think it's an example of the market being allowed to make money and making hay while the sun shines, and when the system collapses and falls over, the government is turned to for a bailout. So I think it's an exact example.
I don't believe
of appalling policy on government.
So you had a question.
Yeah. This is slightly off topic, although I'd love to address that one.
To all candidates again, do you think there's benefit in allowing and focusing policies that are to run our country and impact the people that make up our country by looking at it through the microscope of the scientific method?
I think very much the Green Party has a very, very strong principle, both of ensuring that there's enough information on everything, so it's part of the scientific method, ensuring that we have the standards in place, that we have the measurements and that basis. The other thing that I think is part of the scientific method is transparency, and that's another thing that the Green Party is extremely strong on. Our co-leader, Materia, on her first term as co-leader of the Green Party in Parliament, obviously shone the spotlight on expenses, parliamentary expenses. I mean, a perfect example where just simple transparency, simple publishing what people do, turns up all sorts of funny things, and it clarifies exactly the spending that goes on in Parliament. So I think that's a good example of the scientific method at work. So the Green Party is extremely keen on many aspects of the scientific method.
Either of the other two candidates? John? Yes.
Yep. Well, I'd just like to say that, in terms of that, what we are looking at doing is having measurable outcomes. If you listen to the discussions tonight, there's been a lot of talk about growth and stuff which is going to come from somewhere. But the Labour Party has got measurable outcomes, they've got measurable ways to pay for these things, and at the end of the day, the only way to judge these things is on outcomes and past track records. And if you look at, just despite what Gareth at the end says, if you look at the track record of the Labour Party, for 8 years prior to losing to National, they ran a balanced budget and they handed over a substantial surplus. Where's it gone? In 3 years, with a National Act government, now there's nothing left. So if you want to look at scientific method, let's look at outcomes, let's look at what has been delivered, and let's look at measurable plans for making things better in the future. So far, Labor's the only one who's come up with any measurable plans and ways to deliver those plans.
Gareth, do you have anything to add that isn't about whether or not Labour left a surplus?
I would like to forego the question and rebut it.
Right. This gentleman down the front here. Yeah. By all means, question.
Just in relation, earlier on it was said that New Zealand has almost no effect on, in terms of the environment, in terms of global carbon emissions. Okay, yes, that's true, but it seems to me at the moment what we've got throughout the world is a case of let's just pass the buck on to someone else. In relation on the last two candidates, do you think New Zealand's ever going to be in a position to be a true world leader in terms of, solar power technology, wind power technology, other renewable sources, and even, transportation systems that aren't purely based on oil?
Well, I'll be first to respond to that. Firstly, the Labour government, led by Helen Clark, was a world leader in implementing an ETS trading scheme. They were very aware of those impacts and they had those plans in place. Since then, they've been destroyed. Secondly, I know for a fact that there is a great deal of research going on into all of those areas, and that's exactly what I've been saying, is that we have to provide the incentive and the economic environment to those high-tech companies in order to make those things work. One example is the Raycon GPS thing, which nobody knows about. They make oscillating crystals, tiny little things that go into GPS devices. We're bloody good at it. We earn $2 billion a year making those things and exporting them. If we put the same amount of effort into solar energy, into all sorts of other alternative energy providers, we could be world beaters, but we need the commitment to actually put the investment and the talent into those industries.
I'm going to turn the question over to Gareth immediately. Specifically, I'm curious, John seems to be saying there's a role for government to stimulate that sort of investment. Do you have an alternative recipe for achieving the same sort of goal that the question is raising?
Well, we believe that our greatest potential is human potential, and we're a very highly educated nation. A lot of our people go overseas because they frankly find New Zealand a very low paying economy and don't want to live here straight away. They come back, they have their kids, they do that sort of thing. But what we want to do is we want to make it easier for people to conduct business and without regulation, without the burden of high taxes in New Zealand today. We want to ensure that people are not unfairly taxed at the top. 80% of the tax revenue is paid by about 10% of the population, and to me that's fine to an extent. The rich people should pay their part, but they always pay more tax anyway. Even if it's at 15%, they're still going to pay twice as much tax as someone on half their income. I believe that keeping people in the nation is essential, and a lot of these people are people in high-paying jobs, and these are the people that create wealth for our country. Shouldn't we be wanting to keep these people here in this country? Shouldn't we be wanting to encourage growth, encourage things? Shouldn't we be wanting to pursue cheaper electricity, not at the expense of carnivorous snails on the west coast because we can't get a dam in to produce power? Should we focus on things that are going to make our country richer and better, or should we focus on things that are going to hurt us and limit us through carbon emissions and all these things? So it's just focusing on the right issues. It's focusing on people, it's focusing on jobs, it's focusing on the overwhelming poverty we have, focusing on the generations of beneficiaries we have. We should be focusing on increasing everyone's outcomes, and that's what ACT believes in.
Richard, anything to add?
I'd just like to say that, I think the ACT Party probably just focuses on the money. So I think you can all see the absurdity of saying that our carbon emissions, being only 1% of the world's emissions or a fraction of the world's emission, how bizarre that statement is, especially coming from the ACT Party. I mean, if you use that line of reasoning, why grow your economy? It's only 1%, it's only a fraction of the world's economy. So obviously it's our emission per person that counts, and I think New Zealand's got a huge opportunity in front of it. Per person, as a small nation of 4 million people, I mean, we can be a shining example to the world, both in our democratic institutions, in our guiding principles, and our aiming points. So we're already at 70-75% renewable energy. We should be aiming for 100%. We should be basically taking on board some of John's points. We should be ensuring that our tax system taxes those bad things, that it becomes uneconomic to build gas-fired and coal-powered stations, that there is no reason to dig coal out of the ground, that we have alternative energy sources. There's plenty there, there's a huge opportunity, and the Green Party's right there pushing it every inch of the way. So thank you very much.
We have one last question from over here, and then you can clap.
One last.
I realise that the Electoral Commission may change some of the details to keep MMP, but currently how do all your parties make important decisions such as the lists, policies, that sort of thing?
I think I've already covered on that one for the Green Party. The Green Party has a very democratic system. Basically, everybody within the party has a national conference, and everybody comes together, listens to the various candidates from around the country, and it's a completely open, transparent system of voting. And by that method, we get our list MPs. There's a few checks and balances within that. It's not completely open market. We've also got a gender balance that has to match within those top list placings. So it's a good system, completely transparent in every way. So that's the way the Green Party does it.
In terms of Labour, we have a very clear policy of redressing imbalances that come through in a purely constituency electoral system. So therefore our list is selected on who we want to truly represent the people of New Zealand, and often those people don't have a voice in constituency electorate, so our list is compiled on that basis. And I think under MMP it is a very, very good way to ensure that everybody in New Zealand has a voice, has a say, and that there is a representative voice in Parliament of society as a whole, and not just certain sectors who do get that constituency.
Our list is left up to the whim of Don Brash and the board. No, honestly, we have ballots, regional ones, who the region would like to represent them as a region. But in essence, we're a small party, so we try to garner support from everyone, and you know, people don't know people as well as other people know people. But and you know, it's transparent. You can sort of see where the border's gone with things and what so, and where it goes. But
I'd like to ask our club president, George, to come down and close this debate.
Hi guys, for those of you who don't know me, I'm George Carvel. I'm the president of the Reason and Science Society who's hosting this event. First and foremost, I want to thank our candidates for coming along. Thank you so much. Thank you to all of you in the audience. Thanks for your productive questions and your interaction. Many thanks to Leith who arranged this. Basically what I have to chime in at the end of this is that we think, we being the Reason and Science Society, that these sorts of discussions are absolutely essential for our country as a whole and for everybody's understanding of what's going on, what our leaders are doing, and where our policies are taking us. So I hope that you all got some valuable insights from this debate, and thank you for coming.
Thank you all.
Right. Thanks. Thanks a lot, Josh. So you drafted in the last minute.